Welcome back to the Darius Gant Show. I'm your host, Darius Gant, as well as founder and CEO of Tesoro AI. On this podcast, as you know, we focus on game-changing technology, specifically artificial intelligence, and the founders and executives who are putting their heart and soul on the line to revolutionize business. In this episode, we sit with Vikram Takru, who is the CEO and founder of a company by the name of KloudGin, which focuses on field services and asset management. We'll dive into what that means later. Vikram himself has quite the impressive track record. He built a company by the name of Frontline Consulting Services, scaled it to about 500 employees and 40 million in revenue in just 4 years, and eventually exited to a company by the name of Tech Systems. He was also the senior director of R&D at a company by the name of Oracle, which I'm sure you all know. Today, Vikram is going to join us to talk about how artificial intelligence is revolutionizing field services and allowing field service workers to work more productively under the toughest conditions. If you or your team is looking to build or scale an AI solution or AI team, make sure you reach out to the team over at Tesoro AI, whether it's AI strategy, custom software development, data labeling, or staff augmentation. We've got a strong team here that has your back. All right, without further ado, let's hear from Vikram. Thanks for joining us today, Vikram.
Thank you. Pleasure is all mine.
So I want to, set a baseline here and have you paint a picture of the industry you're in. So field services, what is that? And from your perspective, what is the major pain point that you're seeing within the industry?
So the first thing on the industry itself, right? We are in the field service and the asset management industry, not the wealth management, but the hard assets like your transformers, your HVACs, your substations, your oil rigs, your 5G equipment, right? So the industries are pretty much your caterpillars, right? The huge industrial manufacturing companies. So if you step back, the industries that we are in are very asset and service related industries. So you look at water, gas, your electric, solar, the car storage, charging stations, telecom, industrial, like those are the industries. Now, before I answer the question, what's the biggest pain point that they have, right? You ask anybody, I worked for Oracle for many, many years, and obviously looking at SAP, IBM, Microsoft, and now obviously Salesforce and all that. There is not a single user of the software, and I'm talking about white collar users, by the way, who sit in air conditioned room with deep Wi-Fi connections. There's not a single user I ever met who said, I love my SAP, right? I love my Oracle. I love, my IBM. They, in fact, when they were about to do a task using that software, like keying an order, they used to sweat. They have a key right next to it to pay that. So when we look back, right, we looked at, okay, you know what? First of all, you now take that whole thing to field workers who are climbing electric pole 1,000 feet away, up under here, digging a trench on an oil rig with their hands that dirty, with no cellular connection, maybe spotty, Wi-Fi basically exists. And how the heck? So that was our problem. We said, if the world needs to get transformed, you need to basically build software to solve the problem for the people who actually are out there doing work around, right? If you want the world to be digitally transformed. So that actually drove us. That was one of the big problems, user adoption, which, by the way, you can take that into any vertical, any industry, and it's across the board. The other was efficiency, like operational efficiency. There's if you look at the systems, if you go and, have a scheduling system, give you an appointment window. Uber can give you a 10-minute appointment window. But you ask anybody else, you get probably a 4-day appointment window, 8-hour appointment windows, right? So there's whole inefficiency built into the system, which we obviously got us into solving this problem.
Okay. Very helpful. And so, in terms of what you all are producing, your solution, how are you solving that problem?
So the way we are solving that problem is that we first built a single cloud-based field service and enterprise asset management platform product to work together, basically. And anything which we built on that platform, we built in a way that it focuses on the field guys, keeping them in mind. Second thing which we also looked at them is how the new work processes, like, reimagine. There was no Google Waze or Google Traffic, for 5 years back. So now if you're a field or an asset person and you're going basically to a point A to point B, you need to look at, okay, how the heck can I use all the data that, Google has to use that? So we reimagined the workflows, we reimagined the customer service experience part of it, that, people don't want to wait on a call. They want to have a 24/7, within less than 4-second book an appointment actually around. So we reimagined the whole operational efficiency, the customer experience, and the worker side of the house, right? So that's the core for what we do.
Yeah, definitely. And I can imagine, if you're using some of the, I'll call it older tech, those companies haven't, especially on the enterprise side, right, haven't necessarily built the technology in the way that you see the ease of use in consumer type technology.
Correct.
And what's very interesting is that now, when you look at enterprise tech, people are demanding that ease of use. They're demanding that user experience that we have become accustomed to as individuals, now that we're using tech in our everyday lives, now that we're using software and applications in our everyday lives. What we've become used to as consumers is driving change on the enterprise side. Would love if you could walk us through, a use case, right? Or maybe the most common use cases that, you might have over there at KloudGin.
So a common use case is, I'll give you an example of which will kind of cover everything, right? I put myself into the shoes, right? Very personal to why we started what we did, basically. That if you have, you get a high bill from your water company or your electric company, and you book an appointment, which is, you call them. Now, generally, when you see a problem, you see probably in the evening hours, like when you're at home and you had your dinner with the family, basically, right? Now, in a real world, what happens today is you actually call somebody and you're on the phone and, guess it's after 5 p.m. Pacific time, you cannot call them, basically. So we built a system that, why do you need to interact with somebody? You can, if you have a single scheduling and dispatch engine built on AI, which can know who is available and how much capacity do you have, basically, and what the demand is, it can actually give you an appointment slot. And if that engine, if it was intelligent enough to know the traffic pattern and also know that, if Joe is going to do the work compared to Vikram doing the work, Vikram does something which takes an hour and Joe can do the same thing in 15 minutes because he's been doing that for 25 years. All that AI data, once you combine into an intelligent engine, then you can schedule something, you can dispatch something, and you can be more operationally efficient. Plus, you get a simple, easy way, a guided way, predictive way for the field crew who's coming to your home to have the right truck with the right part and at the right time, basically, to come. So that's what we transform.
Okay, yeah, and that certainly sounds like a lot of value you're creating there via a lot of kind of separate use cases. What I'm really curious about then is, as you develop the AI as a startup, how did you approach the data, your data strategy, right? Where did you begin collecting the data from as you think about training the models that you need for this AI to work accurately?
Right. So that's a great question, by the way. Now, on what we did is, every 2 seconds we get GPS data from field crews, right? So we know we have a lot of data that we get on field crews where they are, right? Every transaction that they do, like whether it's a time card which is just getting generated, or they worked on a machine to replace a part, they go to my home and I have a dog. Although whole scheduling, everything is fine, Vikram can still do, or Joe can still do their job in 15 minutes. And there's no traffic, everything is anticipated, but when you come to my home, I have a dog. and dog takes 15 minutes to leash unleash, right?
Right.
So how the heck do you predict that into your efficiency that, how you handle? So what we did is we store all data. The first time when Joe goes to your home and my home and there's a dog, right? And that thing he puts in his notes. Next time when we schedule something to to my home, it will automatically add 15 minutes to it, basically, to ensure that the schedule or the sender sends a message. So we collect a lot of data. We were born on the cloud. So we had infinite storage which we can store, unlike a lot of competitors who had on-prem relational models, right, where the whole idea is, okay, I have to truncate my data. Where do I back up what I do, right? So we're born on the cloud. We collect all asset data, all crew data, all customer-related interaction data, and using that we predict basically the next demand, where it is going to occur, where the pipe is going to break basically, or the substation is going to fail, or and how much capacity do you need basically, and who can do things better basically as well. So that's our AI world basically.
Okay. So then did you start with, I'm curious if there was some sort of, publicly available data set, or did you take the data from what you've seen with existing customers and then you built AI into the actual application?
Yes. So we actually started with grounds up, right? For example, if you have a machine which is giving every 2 seconds or every 4 seconds a sensor signal, right? That data, it's just gone, right? Nobody even stored that data, right? They just get rid of that data basically. So we created a model to store that data. If they have that data, they can import it into our system. But a lot of times, most of the customers, like historical data is bad, it doesn't exist basically. And then we also went to some syndicated data providers, like for example, for traffic, right? I mean, Google has that data, right? And that gets generated, new things come, new developments come, new roads come, new cars come. That's the constant data. So rather than reinventing that, we actually piggybacked on that data to use as an example, basically, as well.
Okay. Yeah, very, very interesting. I always think the contrast between, if you're looking at a large organization that has, let's call it a large base of usable data versus a startup where you have to kind of figure out, how am I actually going to train these algorithms? There has to be some strategy behind, how do you go find the relevant data? Is it data that you can get affordably, right? Because presumably you don't have a ton of clients who are already paying you to do this. Or can you partner with certain companies who will provide you the data to build a first version of your application? So I think that's very interesting to dive into. Also, you mentioned a few different things that you can do for the customer. I'm curious, in those conversations with the customer, are there any metrics that you're speaking to related to ROI, or, because there are so many use cases, or are you specifically going in and you're selling, we can do this one thing and we have all of these other things that could also benefit the organization? I'm curious about their approach, given so many different paths you can go down.
Yeah, so there are two. So we do go with ROI, and we also go with a fundamental problem, which I said is user adoption. There is the biggest problem today. I was talking to one of very large customers, enterprise customer. It's about enterprise asset management. They're running $200 million investment into a system, basically. And I was asking them, do you like your, Maximo, IBM Maximo they were using, right? IBM Maximo for enterprise asset management. They said, we only use 6% of IBM Maximo. Right? Wow. So you're pretty much, you needed a Model 3 and you were given 18-wheeler basically to solve the problem, right? Which is there. And he said, all my IT budget gets sucked into just maintaining this beast, actually. I just have nothing left for innovation. And the second problem, which this customer had, I'm giving you a roundabout answer to your question, basically, by giving you the second problem this customer has is that my field guys cannot even use it, actually. They cannot input the data. It's like so hard to, use that it doesn't use. So even 6% of the system is unusable by the field guys. And if you can't input the data, you're as good as basically anything, right? Because guess what, right? You can't put the data in and people can't use it. You can do whatever system you want, doesn't matter, basically. So our ROI pieces come in two ways, right? One is we build basically for the field guys. Go and talk to our users. These are unionized workers who are non-tech savvy, And
Okay.
they are using our system with almost zero training, and in a very rugged, complex way, right? Because I mean, they're doing complex work. They're changing your assets. They're doing 100 different task parts. It's not like
Mm-hmm.
Uber basically sending somebody from point A to point B. So that is one part which we go with. That in user adoption, we have cracked that puzzle, right? Because that's your number one problem. The second thing on the ROI which we look at is that nobody built a scheduling engine to do all asset and short cycle, long cycle, field work, customer work all together in one engine, basically, and built on the cloud. Most of the engines were built 20 years back, basically, only to do one type of work. So once we get everything optimized into one engine, that allows for very different possibilities. So our ROI numbers range from 25% and up, basically. So you can do the same amount of workforce, you can do 25% more work or more, depending on how you are using the system. And as the system becomes more and more intelligent and the AI model starts kicking in, your efficiency is going more and more, because you pretty much know in our world who can do what parts do you need, what type of a job needs what, basically.
Yeah.
So once you have combined assets, customers, contractors, and employees together, you pretty much have all the information to optimize.
Okay. And one of the things I find very interesting is, we talk a lot about AI, the power of AI to revolutionize the way we do business and the way we live. But what seems to be more important, and something that you just mentioned, is adoption, right? Especially if you're considering the end user who might not be tech savvy. They may still prefer a flip phone. But
yeah.
I'm curious, as you thought about building out KloudGin, right, specifically related to the user experience, how do you approach getting that right? I'm not going to toss out answers, but I'm curious how you guys thought about, this is going to be our main thing, right? We got to make sure these field service workers actually use our technology. So how do you think about getting that right?
Yeah, so that's it, by the way, probably $1 million question, or probably a multi-million-dollar question,
Okay.
which is around. And I'll give you an example, right? I mean, this is about a couple of years back, before even the Alexa and Amazon stuff was not even out, actually, in the market. Nobody even knew that. We, by the way, sit on AWS cloud, so we've been a great partner with them. So I got an early Alexa device. It's shipped to my home, and my wife is a teacher, elementary school teacher, basically. Non-tech savvy, basically, very scared, to touch stuff and all that. And I have a alarm clock which has been on my bedside for almost 15, 20 years, right? The same clock with those buttons, 3 or 4 buttons, right? And sometimes she has to get up early at 5 a.m. Sometimes I have to change, so somebody has to change the alarm, right? Which has been there. And for last 15 years or 20 years, right, I've been married, basically.
Okay.
It has always been me who's supposed to do that. And I used to sweat that, did I set the AM right? Did I put it on PM? What happened? A simple 2-button thing, right? Which even I used to sweat, and she obviously never did, right? So once we got this 4 years back, from Amazon, the first beta shipment of the device, right? I saw her, by the way, she's a teacher, so she still shouts at it, basically, go and set up the alarm, blah, blah, blah. I have never set up the alarm. And that opened my eyes. I realized that if you need to push AI and technology into things, the biggest problem is that too many touches that people do. It doesn't matter what it is. The moment somebody has to touch something, it becomes hard. So we built a lot of those techniques. Voice is one, to leverage AI on the voice side, but we also build things that less clicks. If I'm going to do a job A, don't show me 100 fields, which a lot of products have been built. Basically, just show me those 2 things, right? If I have to do my job and I have to cut between a blue wire and a red wire, I, as a field crew at that time, don't show me the thing. Tell me that which wire should I cut, actually, around. So we have built a lot of those things inside the system. Similarly, for dispatchers and schedulers, right? Sometimes there's an emergency, right? Or you have to move, somebody's calling you, and how the heck your brain works, right? We program that it tells you, it recommends you, right? We still feel that, AI will predict things, will guide you, but you still need human trying to basically put judgment on that, what call to make, basically. So that's what we are building. I mean, around, it's not that we've solved all the problems,
Yeah.
but I think that's the core that we built.
Okay. And related to the user experience, right? I mean, did you get it right on the first time, or is this something where you had to iterate, right? Where you're working directly with the end user?
So we didn't get it right at the first time, and we still probably, will never get it right fully right. Otherwise, we will not exist, basically. But I still remember CalWater, the second largest water utility in North America, basically, right? Water, wastewater. We modeled our first product, and we thought, we figured it out, right? With the cool, the small buttons, everything, which is around, and we thought we have simplified the experience. And I remember vividly sitting in a truck with one of the field crews, and CalWater was good enough to help to sit with us. And I realized that how wrong we got the first iteration, right? We went back and, changed and stuff. And over years, right, sitting with them, you kind of realize what they go through and, what do you need to change, basically. So it's an iterative effort over years.
And what have you seen on your end in terms of adoption? I think you mentioned an IBM product where, they were only using 6% of the entire capacity of what they could be using on that particular product. And then even fewer people were actually using the 6% that the organization said was, available to that particular group. So I'm curious, in terms of adoption for you guys, where are you seeing that since you've had this focus on adoption itself?
So adoption is, if you solve the field guy's problem, you are golden, basically, right? Because now what is happening is, like, we have obviously field service, asset management, single cloud product, but there's also spawning things around connected customers, alternate business models on e-commerce, where they're bringing contractors to do, some other services in addition to what they've been providing, right? So adoption, not only on our existing products skyrocket, but we are also seeing things which we didn't even lead with. Like, for example, Hawaiian Telecom uses our field service and asset management cloud solution. Now they are rolling out to, in all Hawaiian Islands, basically, our connected customer piece. Because they are saying, oh, you know what, I can give this to our customers, because even my field guys don't need training. My customers, I can't have my 1 million customers being trained, right, on this. So I can take slice of that and give this to my customers, right? So we are seeing adoption not only on existing products, but we are seeing our other products and workflows being pushed as well as they improve their processes and efficiency.
Got it. So we won't come back and hear that you all are only around 6% adoption, huh?
Absolutely not, right? Especially in the cloud world, right? It's very easy. You win your bread every day. It's your food, because you just can't sign a large contract and then just go away, basically.
Yep. Okay, so I want to change directions here. Talk a little bit about building the team as a startup, as an AI startup. So if you could share that journey, right? Was it you who built the first version of an AI-based product? Did you need to lean on a co-founder who had the AI chops? What did that look like in the early days?
So the early days is, you need to wear multiple hats, right? You need to also be very connected to your customers and industries, because we're very industry focused, field service, asset management solution. But you also need to have a co-founder which has complementary skills. And I was very fortunate to have my co-founder is pretty much like my significant other. My wife tells, both our wives tell that looks like you guys are more married to each other than to us, basically, right? So you need to have somebody who has those complementary skills, which you bring to the table around. And that helped us a lot in the first version of our product, basically, as we built around. Because you can't, as you said, right, you can't have your data science and scientists leave and all the knowledge is just gone. And what the heck do you do, right? Because in early days, right, when it's hard, right?
Right.
Your brain cannot walk away, basically.
Right. The way I see it happening most times is there's one person, it could be a combination of both, but like there's one person who has a deep level of understanding of the subject matter at hand, right? And then you kind of marry that with someone else who has a deep level of technical know-how, right? I know how to set up our infrastructure. I know how to go out and find the data we need. I know how, model select, they have this deep level of knowledge into that specific AI piece. And so I guess what you're saying here is you brought one piece, your co-founder brought the other piece, and then you were able to marry those together. Okay, so who is who? Who is Mario? Who is Luigi? Who is
Exactly right. Like which you said. Yeah. So we did bring in complementary skills, and we also had another set of folks who were also very complementary, right? So not a two-person job, right? You're transforming, building a single cloud field service asset management solution, and going after complex mission critical applications, right? So it needed a lot of other people to also step up, and as part of our journey as we started, basically.
Okay. Let's talk about actually building out, right? Now at some point as co-founders, you kind of have to step away from the technical aspect. So you have to hire your first data scientist, your first machine learning engineer. How did you think about that? Did it come from your network? And I particularly like to key in on this because sometimes for startups, right, there's this competition for data scientists, and generally it's between startups, big tech. So there's always kind of that, you have to find a way to get the talent that you need to build out the systems, the applications that you have envisioned. How did you all approach that particular piece?
So it was a combination, right? If you look at anybody's journey, right, where I started after, my engineering degree and where I am, right, every 6 months or year, it was a transformation, like, learning something else, right? I started with, those green mainframe computers on COBOL, and then, going over, right? So with that pedigree, one of the things we always did was we also trained our core team, basically. We bring in outside talent, but also realize we have people when we look for team members, we don't look for one skill, right? You can always teach people skill. You can't teach them attitude, basically. So we always looked at, people who are always pushing the envelope just like us, to looking at, okay, how the heck do I do that? I'm not scared to, go into unknowns. And we train them, and that's what I tell those are our special forces, right? Who've been with us, and where we go into the wars together with them, and couple them with obviously some deep domain data scientists, machine learning, and AI folks who bring that information, basically.
Okay. Which is very interesting. I imagine, and correct me if I'm wrong here, what it sounds like is you had some folks who were already, experienced in that computer science field, right? They may have been a software engineer, for example. So are you saying that you took the next step in terms, all right, well, you understand software engineering, let's add the data science piece?
That is correct. Let's add the data science field, and also somebody who understands that deep industry AI problem. I have looked at AI always as, I'll give you my wife's example, basically, right? She uses one of the most sophisticated AI natural language processing system which ever existed, basically, but she has no idea what she's interacting with, right? So I have always felt that, we probably today have one of the most sophisticated technology in scheduling, dispatch, asset distributions, and crews and mobile interactions, customer interactions built in, but we don't want our customers to even know anything that what is sitting behind, because they don't care. Basically,
right.
If you try to tell the guy who's trying like 1,000 feet above dangling and doing an inspection or installing a 5G system on telecom tower that, here's the AI, basically.
Yeah, he does not care.
Around, right? Around. So that's what we have built, and that's what we tell our team, that think about those people, basically, right? Build the most sophisticated technology hidden from they're not even knowing, right, that it exists, basically. Around.
Okay.
And that's where my think is that you just don't need data scientists there. You actually need people who understand that industry and who have empathy for those people, as well.
Can you talk about a little bit, because I agree with you, right? You're never just going to have a pure data scientist who's going to build a product that makes sense. Let's get back to this adoption point. That's going to be accurate and will be adopted by an end user, right? You need some level of domain knowledge, some subject matter expertise. Can you talk about what that team actually looks like as you're actually building a product? I mean, how many people do you need to bring together? What does it look like as those folks collaborate, And the reason I ask this question is because I imagine if you pull someone, right? Like let's say I'm a hedge fund and I have someone who's an expert in financial modeling, who's an expert in market analysis, and then I have a data scientist here, and we want to build something that's predicting X in the market, right? That person who understands the market, you have to pull them away from, generally what they may be doing on a daily basis in order to build the software. So I'm curious what the time frame looked like for those people to be working collaboratively to build this application.
So I think the first thing is you need the foundation. You need a data model, and you need to collect all the GPS data, like I was talking about, every interaction that's built into the application, like field service, asset, customer, right? All that is basically structured. Once you have the data, basically,
okay,
then comes where your product guys and your customers, actually your partners, are going to tell you that, okay, you know what? Now you have this data. Can you basically, so I'll give you an example, right? So if you see a lot of these dispatchers, right, whether it's a cop dispatching, like, how an emergency comes, or when you call somebody for your auto appointment or any dealership, right, whatever the appointments you look at, there's somebody who's actually either scheduling, which is scheduling and telling you which slot they can give it, right? Now, in our world, like in telecom, electric, gas, oil and gas, water, the emergencies don't come 8 to 5 and Monday to Friday. They can come anytime, basically.
Right.
Around, like, your power is down, or, water main break has happened, right? I mean, these are like life-threatening emergencies, right? When they happen, the dispatchers are not there, basically. The people who are quarterbacking, basically, are not there around. What do you do after hours? So we had the customer brought that problem up and said, oh, you know what? Can your scheduling AI engine, which you have, which can do all scheduling, also run in autopilot mode? Can it run when can I engage the autopilot without no human supervision, basically? In the morning hours, when bulk of the things come, I have somebody, who can supervise, like what it is, and press a button, approve, reject what your engine is telling, but in the night, can you run that? Now, that's the innovation, basically. We had that in the engine. That came from a customer idea that, okay, after hours, my business runs. And then suddenly that opened the whole autopilot, basically, piece that, I can, I have a model for a dispatcher by industry where they can run things up automatically as if a human is running, basically. And it is gaining that intelligence, by the way, from those dispatchers, as that engine is learning from them, basically, and building and perfecting a model, basically.
And so what I'm curious about, though, is, how much involvement are we talking, like, once a week, once a month? How much involvement is required from that subject matter expert? If I'm someone who wants to start an AI company, right, and the developers say, hey, we need to talk to X to figure out which features are important as we kind of train this algorithm, right? How much involvement from the subject matter expert was required for you guys?
So you need to, so there is initial involvement. I mean, you're pretty much reading somebody's mind, right? Yeah. What they are doing, right? Why do you press? So I'll give you an example, right? We realize that when an appointment comes or a request emergency comes, if the word in the notes is leak, it means code red, basically. Like if there's a leak, or power line down, right? That's just on the text, right? It's because a lot of these jobs have same priority, so you can't do just based on priority. Right? How the heck is mine? So so some of those things you have to suck out of them, basically, right? By industry, by domain, right? How this asset works, right? Around, it's not same as, a substation fire is very different from a fire in a brush, basically, right? They don't care. So it's a different thing. So you need to know the context, you need to know the industry, you need to understand that, and you need to suck that out of that brain, basically. Once you get that piece, then it's not hard. Then, because I always tell, the what is very hard. What do you want to do is the hardest part. How you want to do, right? You can put, all sorts of, technology for people to kind of solve the how part, right? How is easy, right? What is the hard part, right? So I think getting that what is hard, then the other thing is, how the heck do you, because that what is not static. Today it is a down power line. Tomorrow you're making something else based on that, right? How does you put a learning process into your engine model so that next time if something else comes, that model knows that, oh, it's not just the leaks, but it is also a water main burst, basically, which I need to look at as well, right? So, so that's where I think it's a continuous process, right? But you initially sucking at least the core out of that person's mind, you need to be just sitting with them and getting
yeah,
that.
no, I agree. It can be hard to really define up front because, how quickly that person is able to spit out that information and at the right time can be a difficult challenge, up front. But I think the important thing is what you said, right? You need those people who have the awareness of the industry, the awareness of how the product is going to be used and the insights it needs to deliver. To be able to actually create the application to increase the accuracy of whatever it is you're trying to build. So super helpful. I know we are kind of coming up on time here. I have one last question for you. If you could go back to day one, knowing everything you know now, what would be the advice that you would provide yourself at day one?
So if I go back in time, right? One of the
day
things
one of KloudGin, though, not day one of Oracle.
Yeah. I could have done a lot more things, right? I've wasted a lot of my, in a good way, right? I learned a lot, right? Just say you learn. So day one, if I go back on KloudGin, I would probably have started sitting in those trucks and in those minds of dispatchers and executives and these industries. Probably day one, lot more wasted to start with, because if you wait for that, what happens is that you have to go back to the drawing board and iterate, basically. So getting to know a lot of those things upfront as much, and it's a hard thing, right? You're going into, depending on the problem you're solving, which industry you're going, which assets you're looking at, what you're doing, right? It's a hard problem. But if I can go back and I can, go and sit and then suck that out of a couple of, minds with customers and partners early on, it would have saved us a lot of time.
Awesome. Yeah. That's very helpful. Very helpful. So yeah, that's it. That's all we have for time, but we appreciate you sitting down here. I know you're extremely busy. So again, thank you. A lot of insights giving here, and hopefully we can have you back soon.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. Thanks, Vikram.